The Walking Dead Survival Instinct is a video game based on the popular AMC TV series, as you can see by the cover art clearly displayed on screen right now. Unlike the Walking Dead Telltale game, which was a huge success, this one allows the player to control Daryl, one of the most popular characters, if not the most popular character from the TV series. I don't know a damn thing about the TV series. I do know that the game was a critical flop, and if it weren't for Telltale's games, it might have turned AMC and the holders of the Walking Dead license away from video games entirely. But because of Telltale's games, the Walking Dead Survival Instinct just became a black sheep, a small blight on a hugely successful video game career for the license. It's easy to imagine that if Survival Instinct were released before Telltale's games, it might have gone the way of Land of the Dead Fiddler's Green, another FPS based on a popular zombie license that was so poorly received it killed any hope for future video game adaptations. I suppose you could draw many comparisons between Survival Instinct and Fiddler's Green in a meta sense, including their genre, but that's where the similarities end, as Survival Instinct is a far superior product. It genuinely tries to be something good, and what it tries to be may not have been obvious to most critics at the time, or even obvious to me upon my first playthrough. You see, Survival Instinct's subtitle is appropriate insofar that how you choose to survive ultimately determines the entire game experience, including the difficulty curve. Similar to a game I enjoy, Alekhine's Gun, depending on where you find items, where you go, and how you use the items you find, you get a vastly different experience from another person playing the same game. If you find the fire axe in one of the earlier levels, for example, you'll be decapitating zombies with no problem for the rest of the game, but if you only find the fire axe in the final level, you may be slogging through the game with inferior melee weapons. It all depends on where exactly you search. The levels and their objectives may be linear, but Survival Instinct makes excellent use of the physical real estate it has, hiding a lot of items away in small nooks and crannies. This ensures that everybody playing the game is going to have a completely different experience, a completely different difficulty curve, and a completely different playstyle. It is, for all intents and purposes, the Alekhine's Gun of first-person shooters, complete with terrible AI and numerous other flaws, but this is the greatest praise I can give Survival Instinct. It lives up to its subtitle excellently, because the entire game experience hinges on your instincts as you search through the levels. This also explains the massive discrepancy between critic reviews at the time, some who found the game to be varying degrees of difficult and too easy, simply because they found weapons at different points in the game. Having a game with difficulty progression that varies wildly depending on the player's instincts is kind of a bad way to be in modern video game journalism, but The Walking Dead Survival Instinct would have received negative reviews regardless because, well, frankly, like Alekhine's Gun, it's not good in a traditional sense, but I'm gonna do my best to show it off in a positive light. And in the interest of showing it off in a positive light, here are the parameters we're going to be using for this Let's Play, the things you need to know before we dive in. As just discussed, the game has no standard sense of progression or difficulty curve, so I'm going to manufacture one artificially to show off all the playstyles the average person might go through throughout the course of the game. Although I have acute knowledge of where each weapon is located, what it does, and how it's best used, I'm going to ignore certain weapons and pick up other weapons at specific times in the interest of creating this artificial difficulty curve. I'm also going to be playing through the game with one of the new Game Plus features, which gives Daryl extra melee damage. This will increase the game's speed significantly, making it seem much less like a slog, and also make the weapon progression more apparent and more interesting. Whenever there is a divergence in the story path, I will attempt to make the most interesting divergence possible. The story divergences are very few and far between, but there are a few I quite like. And finally, in spite of me going through the effort to create an artificial sense of progression, I'm still going to be thoroughly discussing all of the broken game design, broken mechanics, issues with the narrative, and everything else. This may sound like a hell of a lot more effort than Survival Instinct is worth, but honestly, I think that it tried to be something good, and I want to show off its positives and negatives as much as possible. Plus, I really don't hate it that much. Whenever a game's subtitle actually matches its design, it's a big plus for me. It doesn't happen nearly as often as I'd like, so it already has that going for it. Alright, I'll see you in the actual Let's Play.